to allow for the trees, that would be between the driveways, but we don't need to move the driveway. We can put the trees in on lot two. They're fulfilling the same function. And it'll keep us from having to move that house closer to the neighbors who don't want it any closer. And it'll also keep our land disturbance to be reduced. The other issue that I saw was somebody had asked for a driveway sign out in front of the property, hidden driveway.
Yes.
We're happy to do that. I understand it's 2 signs, just tell us what you want them to say and where you want them.
Right.
And we'll put them in. And I'm gonna ask,
We have an instead of one of the plans showing that.
all right, Mr. Bastardis, our engineer.
Yep.
To review the proposed trees and landscaping with you, and if you have any questions after that, we'll answer them, and hopefully get a recommendation of approval.
Part of my voice, I'm grandchildren. Wait, it always gives you. I came out with 16 trees that we have to replace. So what we did was did a combination of evergreen and deciduous. The deciduous we were using, we upped the size to 2 inches per Mr. Committee's request. And then as far as the evergreens, we chose those because it's more of a screening effect than a deciduous. So we went for the 2-for-1. And we're showing 16 evergreens, kind of put them where they're so block views. As Mr. Dunn said, we had the trees between the 2 homes for screening as well. Mr. Committee asked for it. And we're also showing the street trees. Come to compliance with that. You realize there's a chance to look at the plan, but I think you'll be happy.
And were you able to review any of these, the landscape plan with any of the neighbors?
No.
Yeah, no. Okay.
We buffered wherever, screened where they asked for it, so.
Sure.
You guys have any questions? Not about that specifically. Any questions?
No, I was looking at the placement of the sign, I want to see a problem with that.
I know you're not required for a buffer, but are you willing to add a few more trees if neighbors need to or would like to see less of what's going on here? I say that because when I'm looking at this, you know, you've got, like, on the left-hand side, you've got 4 evergreens, and my guess is.
Plus there's existing.
Well, there's no trees there now.
No, I understand that, I
Yeah.
understand that,
Okay.
but I'm just saying, there's also, you know, big change here, so I'm just
The
wondering
property
if
to
it
the
adds a
right
little more
has a
privacy.
fence.
I'm sorry,
The property on the right where there are less pines, they have a fence
sure,
that separates us for that privacy.
yeah,
The one on the left has a split rail fence, which doesn't provide the same privacy, so that's why we put more of the pines on the left-hand side.
right. It's just if I look at this plan and it's every inch is 20 feet, you know, there's a lot of space in between those evergreens. So my thought is, it may make sense to add a few more evergreens along the edge. You know, my plan looks like that's different from this one. I have 4 on this side.
Yeah, that's the one that was,
Back.
That's updated.
Is that the more updated?
yeah, that's
one?
the updated.
I see,
And we could move the evergreens so they're in the right spot to block the view.
right.
You don't really need to space them out.
Personally, I don't care about having evergreens between the driveway. I would rather take those and put those along the edge to give buffer to the neighborhoods, to the other neighbors.
Mm.
And I would strongly suggest that you add a good faith, some additional evergreens along some of those edges, because it will take, you know, 15 years for some of those things to grow in and actually be dense enough that you're gonna have that kind of privacy.
We'd be happy to relocate the ones between the driveways. That was just a request of the engineer.
No, I understand,
Landscape.
but I don't think you get real value out of that I mean, someone's already gonna move in there and they're gonna see, what they've got. But the people who are around you are getting something new there that they probably would like to have buffered just a little bit more. So I think that if we could move those, this is my opinion, maybe the board feels differently about it. If we could move those to other areas that could be better buffered, and if you could offer up a few more trees, not just the minimum that you're required, I think that would go a long way with goodwill. If I were the neighbor, I would feel better if I had a little more buffering, and I feel like sometimes trees can be fairly inexpensive too. And obviously we'll have comment from the neighbors, I'm sure. I can see neighbors are there, so they may have. They may or may not they may or may not agree with me, but I, looking at it and looking at that, I feel like. Get a little more bang for your buck.
Oh, good.
Yes,
We're all the way, the buffering doesn't affect us at all. So, yeah, we have no comment on that.
What were the signs that you guys were okay with? Hidden driveway was okay, but private drive was bad.
Private driveway, I think, is probably more appropriate.
Private drive was more appropriate, or hidden
Private
driveway?
I think private drive, because really not hidden. It's not like you're coming around a corner and you need warning that it's there.
We objected to it, the concept of it being an intersection. As long as it was driveway, I'm indifferent.
Oh, so you don't like one of those like sideways feet that shows that there's you don't want that.
We don't want people to think they can turn down there.
Okay.
Yeah, similar to the sign we saw that was, what was the one that we just saw on the way here?
It was an intersection.
It was an intersection sign that was newly installed on Sugartown Road to let people, yeah, it's big, it's bright, yeah, and we have a difficult time, we have enough trouble right now with people, even though there are two no outlet signs, one on the street sign and one on the street or on the private lane, that, you know, the big one that says no outlet, people still come down the lane thinking that they can get through. So we don't want to draw attention to it.
is that a Google map problem possibly? Was there a road that went through at some point and people look at it and think that they can go through?
That point changed before Google Map existed.
Oh, no, I get it,
Yeah.
because I get it.
Google is not the problem. It's private. It's a private one that some of the delivery services use, not,
They just don't,
not the big people. It's just store people.
yeah, understood.
You know, delivery people are using something different.
I mean, I just want to make on the record, just saying that the purpose of the sign is not really to prevent people from coming in. It's because there's a site distance issue that the township engineer has identified. And if there's ever an accident and identified, it's because the township is aware of a site distance issue at this intersection. I understand a lot of intersections have site distance issues, but this was identified. And the township didn't do anything, and they could be at risk possibly. So, I mean, based on municipal, traffic control devices, the FHWA recommends having some sort of signage or some sort of treatment, and I'm okay with that in the driveway. Sorry.
Do you have any comments on that?
Well, the private driveway sign's fine, yeah.
Okay.
The other item on the landscaping issues is street trees. I think 9 street trees are required. And the applicant wants to get credit for 3 existing trees. But I don't see any street trees there. I probably can't say it.
I think there's 5 there.
Which ones they are?
Nice. Which ones you were talking?
Or you can identify the trees that you'd like, that you're saying there should be credit as street trees.
Yeah, starting from the right, we have one on the right, one on the horseshoe driveway, and 2 on the lot one. Put it all in here.
You guys have any public comment on this before we get into the nitty gritty of it, or?
Thank you for the board for hearing us, that's all.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, I know some of the comments that were raised last month were around construction activities and those types of things. I see you do have a erosion sediment control plan, which is part of the required package, but can we speak to anything that isn't shown here, or anything that accommodations that you've made just to from a construction standpoint in terms of the impact on the neighbors?
So from, because we have enough area on the two lots, we would be able to park all subcontractors on the land during the construction phase to not block the driveway. Trying to think of anything else that would be an appropriate response to that, that's really the biggest thing, is to not blocking the driveway. Keeping the subs, off the driveway when they're parked there. Deliveries too as well. Making adequate space for deliveries so they can pull in.
Yeah, I don't see any like a turnaround or anything like that laid out on the ENS plan, or even looks like just is there a construction entrance identified, and any like tire washes, any of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it should be. Should be on the ENS plan.
I think it's the one construction entrance that'll be the driveway for, I guess that's the eastern lot, that's lot B.
Right, then there's off the horseshoe.
Oh, I see, off the existing horseshoe.
Yeah. Or use the driveway to minimize mud.
I don't have to.
Where are you gonna park your construction cars then?
Well, depending on what lot we start first, probably the farthest one down. We'll use the existing driveway, the house will be demoed. And, we'll have stone there, and we'll park all the cars there and work our way up to, our way out is our goal.
Got it.
Can you remind me all the waivers you want? You need. I have the curb and sidewalks. And then there's go away waiver.
Right, there's a list that Nick prepared. So it's a waiver from section A 490-36.
So it's these four, and then you want the waiver for the curbs and sidewalks from 455-72.5. Those are the 5 waivers you need.
Right.
We don't need this.
Oh, so we're one of the third one on that list we don't need, given the ruling by
So you don't need
That's right.
274-34.
right.
Alright.
And is the fee in lieu of a waiver, or is that just enough? That's probably a common question.
The one, I think for the curb, it's a requirement.
Yeah.
That if there are no existing curbs, they have to pay the fee.
Which they're willing to do, but is it a
Well, they have
waiver
no
to
choice. But the waiver, for the sidewalk, it's a waiver,
okay, it still is a
and
waiver.
to pay the fee in lieu.
Okay. So there's 4, if you add that one, make point 274.34 off.
Alright, well then I will make a motion that we grant approval for the project, subject to the following.
There was one other thing that nobody mentioned, I'm sorry, is the Carroll engineering letter. I presume you're gonna comply with all their comments, because there's a lot in there.
I wanted to so at the end of the last meeting, I asked them if the store was. If there's any chance to take that 2 feet 6 inches and move it a little bit. Just in case these people aren't friends, and something's happening here. The only thing that this property owner can do is install a fence. So Nick, were you unable to move it a foot or 2 or 3?
Right,
And
plus
why?
that neighbor there doesn't want any closer on that side.
Say that again?
We couldn't move it any closer because we're pinched on room, and that neighbor on that side didn't want to move that way.
Okay.
Tom, the other thing that I mentioned is, I know that you had said you wanted some kind of a buffer with the trees there, but I feel like a lot of those 5 trees could be better utilized around the edge. And I think the applicant was willing to move those and maybe get more on the edge to help with some buffering.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll do it again. I'm gonna make a motion. For approval of the project, subject to the following. That. The waiver is granted from the curb and sidewalk requirement of section 455-72.5. And we want the applicant to pay a fee in lieu of instead. A waiver is granted from section A 490-36.b. Allowing the applicant to construct two adjacent driveways less than 10 feet apart. A waiver is granted from section A 490-36.k. Allowing the applicant to maintain the existing double entry driveway on proposed lot 1. A waiver from section 274-42. Allowing the applicant to count the existing 4 street trees towards the street tree requirement. Furthermore, the applicant will contribute 2 signs that say private driveway, something to that effect. And the applicant will comply with the township consultant's review letters.
And we'll add additional trees around the buffer area.
Or,
So add trees on the perimeter of
Mhm.
both the lots.
Mhm.
Can that be considered the movement of those trees between the two lots?
I would strongly recommend moving those 5 trees and adding some additional trees.
How many more would you like?
Honestly, I'd have to look at it a little closer, just to see, because now what is up here and what is in here were different, so. I mean, certainly the 4 trees that we're waving, 3 trees could be evergreens that could go around the edge as well. I don't know the neighbor on the right-hand side, what the neighbor on the right-hand side back here.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've got a big backyard that you can't see that anymore.
So if we move the 5 and maybe another 4 for the street tree?
Yeah, I would
Make-
think move the 5, add your 4, and if there's holes that you think, that we think need to. There may be a few more that need to get added to it. If you move those, I think if you had 12 extra trees, 5 in the middle, and then your 4 and a couple extra, like 12 trees, you could do a lot better job on the left-hand side. Of filling that in, and then I don't know what the view is
Right,
between the
back end.
neighbors on there, but I think giving them a little extra
That's fine.
buffer.
So that'd be 5, 4, so and in addition to what's there, so 4 more plus 4 for the street trees and then 3, and then 5 is the 12.
I think you have 12, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we could do that.
The only other thing I can think of is install replacement trees as required by the ordinance.
we can add that, as stated. Or,
Yeah, you can add that. What?
do you need me to say it, or can you?
No, that's fine.
Is that the 274-34?
But it's not a waiver. They're not getting a waiver for it.
I see.
All right, is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, do we have any public comment? Tony, anybody want
No public comment.
to? Comments? Sure. Alright. All those in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye.
Alright, Darius, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to meet
Sleep tonight.
you. It was great to see you.
Thank you. Look forward to getting some. Yeah, thanks.
Well, I'll call you. I'll be in touch.
We're around.
Thank you, but I will, you know, I'll give you.
That was good. I much appreciate it.
When I said it, you just look.
It's insane to me. They're developing this product and they have put, trees like in nothing. I don't know, they're finding out where the shop's gonna be. I must have.
Alright, next item on the agenda is the township wide trail initiative study.
So this is something that was on the 2026 planning commission.
Beautiful day out.
This item was on the 2026 planning commission initiative as a project to do the trails. It's an overview of the township and evaluation. It is Bob Thomas from Thomas and Campbell that is running the show. He is the trails guru and he is evaluating the entire town and looking for links and nodes to connect the town and make it more walkable and better connectivity. He's not presenting anything. He doesn't have any documentation. He is not showing any plans. What he is doing is introducing himself, giving and introducing Eric, his teammate, and giving an overview of what his path forward is going to be and answer any questions that the planning commission may have. And just so you know, he is planning on attending, he'll probably tell you this as well, the Ped Bike Group meeting in April, which is coming up on the 23rd. So he will get the input of the members of the Ped Bike Group as well. But I just really want to stress there is no study being presented. There is no decisions, nothing to review. It is just a brief introduction and overview of the project. Okay. Bob, can you hear me?
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Yes. Good to see everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me and giving me a few minutes here. We're looking at the whole township, and what we're looking at really is something pretty simple. We're saying when we're done with this, we're going to have a report and opinion of cost for the first phase of work of what would it take to make the township, honest to God, completely walkable and bikeable. You know, you live on Leopard Road, your kid wants to walk to school, and it just doesn't work right now. So we've been reviewing a large amount of material going back to actually 1982. We did a regional bike map of routes, and we surveyed Easttown and had obviously a lot of the same problems, bad intersections and so forth. But what we're going to do is look at all the roads and possibilities, corridors, conservation lands, parks, and then also look at it from the side of all the places that people want to go, obviously to visit each other, but also all the points of interest, schools, shopping, train stations, the whole thing. And unlike other reports that have happened that we've looked over, we're actually looking at the entire street and highway network, and also where there might be possibilities for trail, where are there rights of way or parkland that you have, or other lands, or lands where an easement might be obtained from an owner, which would allow a trail to go through. As far as individual roads, some of them already have a space at the side. Landscape architects call that a bench, where if people were in favor of having a side path or a sidewalk, it could go in easily. Other places require where there are a lot of trees next to the road, you have to route it around and whatever, but we'll be analyzing all that for the major roads and intermediate roads that connect things. Our next step later this month, as you just heard, is we're going to meet with the Ped Bike Committee and start gathering opinions of what they think is working, not working, what they want to see, and so forth. After we do that, and after we have other meetings, we'll be interviewing people, talking to folks, both bike and walk, people who are walking and biking, people who have businesses who feel that, you know, attracting people that way would be a benefit to the township and to the community. At that point, in our agreement, what we're doing then is to assess the best routes and bicycle pedestrian facilities that would interconnect the township and facilities. We're not doing a survey of all the legal rights of way right now, but if you have a corridor, then when you do a detailed feasibility study, you would know that you need to do that. The other thing that's really important, providing this type of opportunity for the whole township is a massive task. So we'll be developing a phase plan of implementation. The idea, we've done this in other townships in Lower Merion and Thornbury and others, where you say, okay, well, this is the first phase we're going to build, and you do it in a way that it makes sense. We all know that thing about, oh, it's the road to nowhere or the sidewalk that goes no place. And we'll try to see that what we're doing is connecting up things. Sometimes a short investment to a sidewalk or a walkable road, we call them community walking streets, that goes somewhere, if it's extended just a bit, can serve other people. Then we'll be giving the township a letter report and an opinion of cost of the first phase, and we'll also be identifying the funding opportunities. We do a lot of work right now with Radnor Township. We're helping the township for the third time writing grants, fourth time actually, writing grants for the Radnor Trail, which are coming in. So that's where we'll end up. So that's a summary, and we're always glad to hear from people. Colleen has my contact information and are here at the office. I see Eric is here joining us from his home office. Eric, why don't you say hello?
Hello, everybody.
Right. Eric's worked with us for over 20 years now. We met through a mutual interest in youth hostels, because we were preservation architects. I think that's something else that people find a little strange about someone who does all the bicycle transportation. And I'm also a former chair of the Philadelphia Historical Commission and currently serve on the commission, and we do quite a bit of historic work. But with that is also landscape. So as we make suggestions for Easttown, a large part of the charm of the township, why people want to be there, the stone walls, the landscaping, and so forth. We don't want to propose to introduce something. It's like we were working on a church in near Wayne, and they said, "Oh, we need air conditioning in this 1880s church." I said, "Well, we're not going to run a big duct down the middle. Why don't we get the ventilation to come up through the pews?" And in the same way, we want to work things in. If there are to be sidewalks, we'll be making recommendations on how that might look and how that can be done in a way that it actually adds to the character of the township. Some of you are aware Chester County has a sidewalk program for villages. If you've been in Uniontown or some of the others, Marshallton, they introduce sidewalks, and it's so walkable. It's led to more people stopping and going to antique shops and businesses and restaurants, and also just for people who live there. They can get down the street to visit somebody and not get run over. So we'll be looking at those things as well. Well, that's pretty much what I have to say. We're very excited about doing this. Oh, the last thing I would say is it's so funny how sometimes municipalities plan, and it's like they're on an island. We have done work in Newtown Township. We were on the team that did their township-wide walking and biking plan. We've been involved with Radnor for 40 years with the Radnor Trail and the Valley Forge Heights Refuge Trail. We've done sidewalks in Tredyffrin, it's so forth and so on. So we're keenly aware that our thinking does not end at the township boundary. And we will be looking at how these routes connect into the adjacent municipalities, and also talking with people in those municipalities, contacts we have, about the opportunities, for Easttown and Radnor, say, to work together on some of the things that you're both trying to achieve. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. I know you have a long agenda. I don't want to keep you later. So feel free to ask questions by all means, and I look forward very much to working with you through this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have a question?
Yeah, I have one question, I guess. Well, maybe I didn't catch it, but I'm assuming you're gonna use the current documents we have, like the reserve report. I don't know if you mentioned that or not, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, we've been going through. Colleen has helped us. We've looked through things, so we're trying to pick up all the documents we can, so we're not missing thought that's already occurred on this aspect or other aspects which would affect what's going on. For example, we'll be looking if there's any report on schools. If there's going to be a change, we want to, that could change a priority. If there's going to be an addition or a new school or something, we want to accommodate that in our thinking.
So this is like a 10,000, foot view looking down. How long does it take for you to gather all the information? And what is the cost of this project?
The total project cost is 40, let me see, I have the number right here.
About $50,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little,
That's a grant or something we got for
yeah,
that?
it's 44,500.
Okay,
So the initial part is about, 10, 12,000 of effort just gathering materials. Then we have 30,000. As you say, it is a connectivity assessment. It's not a detailed, design manual. But that assessment will guide you to say, yeah, here's where we want to start. Okay, then let's do a feasibility on this and see how much it would be in detail, what it would look like, and so forth. But you'll have the overall view and of all the connectivity within and to the adjacent townships with this. And more than a line on a map, we will say that this a bike, for example, whether it's bike lanes, a side path, a walking path in concert with bike lanes, there are a lot of different options. Sometimes there are streets, like in Berwyn, some of the side streets are community walking streets. People are walking in them right now. Do they need a sidewalk? I know we looked at your comprehensive plan in the map, and there it talks about adding sidewalks, but a lot of streets, both in cities and towns and countryside that have virtually no traffic, if they're not high speed, sometimes it's not necessary. You can put up signs, community walking street, or a sign that shows it. There are wonderful ones in Collegeville, in Montgomery County. They put up that show a baby carriage, a bicycle, someone walking, and a jogger. It said, please be careful, and that has worked apparently very well.
thank you.
Bob, you mentioned that you're gonna be interviewing people, walkers and bikers. How do you go about doing that?
Actually, the people that we'll be interviewing are going to be identified to us, who that should be. What we'll do is we have the Ped Bike Committee, and there'll be other places where there's some event or something where we can show up and let people know we'll be there, and they can we'll try to catch people that way. I know we did some work on the Brandywine Trail out at the Brandywine Conservancy, and they had a special day where people come and it's open. And boy, we met quite a few people who never would have come to a trail meeting, but actually ended up being very interested in the Brandywine Trail.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Next item is public comment.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Bob. Thank
Okay,
you.
my pleasure. See you again.
Next item on the agenda is the PBO/DC comprehensive plan alignment.
Again, this was another item on the 2026 Planning Commission initiative. It is, there were some discussions last year about aligning the PBO district and DC district with the comprehensive plan. Tom Comita has submitted a PSA to complete the first step of that process to, I guess, provide or come up, help formulate a vision for what we would like or what the township would like to see for that area. Tom is here, he can explain his PSA and answer any questions.
Sure, thanks a lot. So just to bring points, so the PBO district, it's pretty extensive, going from the very gateway section of Eastern to the edge of the wind, and on this floor area pretty much shows the boundaries, and it also highlights that area where the current zoning beside PBO outlined in yellow is the so-called Devon Center DC overlay. In the comprehensive plan, ironically, the chapter 6 says, establish a vision for Devon Center. And it sort of puts its toe in the water, but doesn't actually say what the vision is. It sort of is a framework to what the vision is. And the fun part of this assignment would be, well, what should the vision be? And so the two overarching work products that are part of this initiative have to do with guiding principles and a concept plan. And you all lived through it, that there was a Devon Center plan that was initiated, but it didn't get adopted. And in fact, there are a lot of different points of view. The good news is that when anthropology and adjoining buildings were created, they did create this brand new, fresh look as you enter Easttown as part of the Dutton Gateway. So that's one point. The other point is, when I was the township planning consultant from 1991 to 95, we were reviewing a lot of car dealerships, one after another. And the minimum landscaping that we saw in the plans, if you drive there today, most of it is gone. So there was Speedcraft Enterprises that sold BMWs. They had a whole small little hedge. It's not there anymore. And so if we ask ourselves the question, well, what would the basic DNA be by 2040, that when someone was driving from east to west and came through Easttown, they would say, wow, they finally did it. They finally did something really great here. So the curiosity will be to determine, well, what is that? And is there the most essential low-hanging fruit part of it, where even if you take some of the best practices of the more recent improvements with street trees and street lights and sidewalks, is there a possibility that there's a theme to knit together some of the good things that are out there? What's missing? As Thomas just talked about, all the roads having walkways everywhere. And obviously that's going to be a heavy lift in some of the areas that are constrained topographically, hydrologically, utility poles and so forth. But there is a good amount of opportunity along Route 30 to do something better than it is today. And so the idea of the first phase is, can we come up with guiding principles to describe a vision that for the most part, probably 98% of the people would agree with, and not upset the apple cart, not propose 5- and 6-story apartment buildings, not produce something that is going to really dramatically change the character. And how could that be simply graphically portrayed in a concept plan? So I was kind of told by Don Curley last November that the supervisors have been thinking about it and had thought of a modest budget of $15,000 to guide the effort. Well, we all know in our collective experiences, you could do a $50,000 plan, but the idea was, can we simplify the view and come up with a first phase snapshot view of what it might look like? So that's pretty much where we are. I think the reason I got rehired by the township is I was representing people who were in opposition to the Devon Center plan some years ago. And somebody must have liked what I was saying. It also happened in Berlin, so I'm glad to be back. But I am aware of the shortcomings of what happened before, where there were certain assumptions that were made that were not either vetted in a public forum before they were rolled out, or maybe misunderstood. So I'm here to hopefully rekindle the idea.
So quick question for you. Are we looking at the PBO district? Or are we looking more at Devon Center that includes the horse show?
I think it's a good question. Whatever we decide to do, we might have sort of a primary emphasis, which I think could be just really tight to the street as a streetscape kind of concept. And then the question is, well, when you go further away, what should happen there? I know that there have been all kinds of ideas over the last 30 years about transit-oriented development and apartments at the train station. Just last week in the Philadelphia Inquirer on Sunday, they talked about SEPTA having deck parking and apartments in Lansdale and other places. And I don't think it's going to happen in Easttown. So, but in any event, the other good news is we're working on the Complete Streets Initiative. We recently interviewed the SEPTA personnel to find out, while we thought it was $2 to park at night, it's $2 to park all day. So if you're going to park at the Devon train station or Berlin, and you go into the city or wherever, or stay locally, it's pretty inexpensive. When I went to the flower show for 4 hours on a Sunday, I paid $38 for parking.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so. Anyway,
Should take
Colleen,
the
did you
train.
want to? Yeah. Colleen, did you want to mention any other parts that I might have missed?
No, I mean, it was, if you have any specific questions for Tom about the PSA. Otherwise, it was approved in the 2026 budget for the planning commission. So, it will be signed off at staff level and, sent back to Tom, and then he'll start working his magic.
So to me, it sounds like for $15,000, we're really just talking about streetscaping, not really looking in more depth at the PBO district.
No,
I think it's more, not to interrupt you, Tom, but I think it's more of a kickstart to really nail down what the vision of that area is.
Okay.
There was a lot of discussion last year on this,
Yeah.
and it just didn't, it didn't get enough traction. So I think if, this is just one small step to kind of have something, for lack of better terms, finalized or, finite, so you have the vision and then you can start working towards the steps to move towards it. So each year, you could do a little more in doing that. So I don't think it would be PBO as a whole, because the PBO is, a pretty big district, and we're already doing the complete streets as part of the LSA. And there's a little gap, to be honest with you, between there. But I think this is just the first step to really nail down what the vision of that area is. What the planning commission and the board of supervisors and what the township as a whole think the vision should be.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
and then maybe one other footnote. When omnibus ordinance were prepared 3 years ago, several members of the planning commission, and I know Chris is virtual, was at the meeting I'm going to refer to. the planning commission went through the zoning ordinance and PBO to determine if uses then recited should be changed or not. To question whether there's emphasis or de-emphasis on car dealership and repair and so forth. And I think on balance, for the whole 330 area, the thought was there are so many existing car dealerships. Let's just make them as good as they can be and not disallow them so they're non-conforming. Because it wasn't anything anybody in this room ever brought up, but the question was, are the zoning permitted uses right? Should anything be added or subtracted? So to Stacy's point, that will be something we'll also have to talk about. Another thing that was kind of like consensus on the Devon Center plan that was a couple of years ago was the whole idea of connectivity, that you get off the train, safely cross over Route 30 in whatever way, in whatever way, shape, and form. And then how do you get to the neighborhoods if you haven't driven? That you can walk back to your neighborhood safely. So that was another.
I have a couple more comments, or just one. I think that the Devon Center, as it's outlined here, should be the focus, not the PBO. There's two major differences: the inclusion of the Orchard property, which I think everyone would agree impacts how you enter Devon.
Okay.
And then also the to your point you just brought up, Tom, the access to the train station on the north side of the tracks. I know there's been some studies done on how to improve that intersection, those types of things. So I just think in general we should look at it from that perspective. How does it connect to the adjoining neighborhoods? So I think those, this, and it's laid out in the comprehensive plan with this layout as the focus. So I think that should be it. My understanding from and then the second is, I think this is a great first step. And what I worry about is that it take a long time to build this vision, and what exists currently in PBO zoning could generate a lot of negative outcomes for the Devon Center. There isn't anything in the zoning that really reflects that a whole bunch of this PBO borders residential neighborhoods, including where I live, but like it's there is no buffer like there is in other parts of the Route 30 corridor. And the zoning doesn't capture that. The zoning really is pretty darn generic suburban commercial high traffic zoning. So I would like as early in this process as possible for us to at least acknowledge what are the shortcomings that exist today, and can we address those while we it's going to be a long process. I understand lots of people's input, and I do think that there's a common vision that can be achieved. I just want to make sure that while we're doing that work, we don't end up with losing more and more of the potential gains, if you will, just through redevelop, through what the laws that are on the books now.
Yeah, and Bill, I'm so glad you brought up when you held up the comp plan about that Devon Center outline, because the more we would concentrate on that, which is a smaller area than the broader, the more we can drill down. Yeah.
So to hop onto that, I look at this. If I was king, I'd almost say that there's a disconnect. There's kind of a disconnect because it seems like you have the Village of Berwyn district, right, on the one side of this. And then you have this tiny core Devon Center. And it's almost like the car dealers just kind of got tied onto the Devon Center. It's almost like just tying the car dealers onto the Village of Berwyn too. It's like you kind of tied that district onto one side, and it doesn't really. It should almost be like the car dealers should be their own separate, distinct district, right? And that should be where the PBO is, and then this core of Devon Center should be more like what the Village of Berwyn zoning is. I think that I kind of think that's the way it should be. The Village of Berwyn accounts for the adjoining residential areas and stuff like that. It talks about walkability and stuff like that. Whereas you don't really need that where the Tesla dealer is, or where the Sunoco is, or the Volvo dealer.
My understanding is there's a lot of uses that need to be allowed that are allowed in the PBO. So making it go, like if there's an area of the township that should be that as it exists today. And then it's just that stretches into Devon where if you take that zoning, you can't generate walkability, you don't have buffers to the adjacent residential areas, those kinds of things, so that's why I do think.
The
We should-
Devon
we don't
side
need
kind of
to-
needs to
yeah.
be divorced from the rest of the PBO.
Okay.
And the PBO
That's
is
a
its own
good-
kind of like
good point.
standalone district between Village Road and Devon Center.
Yeah.
I think that makes the most.
Yeah,
sense.
and so I bought one of the BMWs in 1976.
Yeah.
At Speedcraft Enterprises. That stretch for 50 years is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 50 years from now, it could be the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So-
Yeah, and I think.
I think also when you look at the uses that are in there, I mean, unless something dramatically changes, a lot of those are owner occupied buildings.
Mhm.
And the type of businesses that aren't flipping over quickly. I mean, maybe you don't have an Audi dealership, but it's something else.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think this Devon Center area is really the area of focus because it could become more village-like versus that in-betweeny spot, which
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
crazy part where people go 55 miles.
Very good.
I think that's, yeah.
Tom, are you familiar with the DVRPC's Devon train station circulation study?
I'm not, I should.
Is that the one that had the potential roundabout, all that study,
Yeah,
an
I mean,
intersection
it's-
at Station Avenue, or is it more than that? So I've just seen a couple of those layouts, but I don't.
Yeah,
There
it's
might
the
be
one,
more work done than I haven't seen.
yeah, it's, you have a copy of that one, right?
I don't know,
No,
I don't know.
okay, I can send it, it was. When I joined the board, they had just finished it, it's. I guess DVRPC, Delaware Valley, Regional Planning Commission, had done on their own dime, a study to improve circulation. For the Devon train station.
Okay.
And it was done because, and just from all direction. And I think the southern section is the part that they went to. And with SEPTA. And the prior supervisors that got SEPTA's attention to. Get some grant funding. And that's why some of the sidewalk work has been received because of some of that. Because that study was kind of the catalyst of getting some of that grant funding.
Okay.
The northern part, we kind of kicked, I guess the township kind of kicked the can because it was a little bit more complex. But it'd be good for you to at least look at to see that. I thought it was a pretty good study.
Take a look at it. Thank you.
I'll forward that to you. I know, you see it pretty clear.
And I'm just looking at your scope of services, it looks like really your sources of direct feedback are from the township staff and this board, right? There isn't any other, in this part of the exercise, there's no other interviews or any of that kind of soliciting feedback.
Not for the first.
But yeah, which is understandable, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that that's, yeah. I
Yeah.
understand that.
And we brought that up, and I think if there's any public that do come to these meetings, they can give their input.
Oh, sure.
Which would, yeah, I think would be good if we try to publicize, but I guess.
But
whatever
I
you
think
think that was Yeah, I understand, yeah,
So,
yeah, that would be my, I mean, if you could tweak the deliverables to just add. Weighing in on the current PBO zoning and where it differs from what comp plan. You know, I get it's early days in terms of what the vision is, but what's outlined here that's at odds with the current zoning would be helpful.
Yeah, and then the only other playful thought, I probably had this in a dream, so don't laugh. But can you imagine that we would actually have a group called the Friends of Devon? Instead of the Enemies of Devon?
Yeah.
So
I'll try to
hope-
found it.
I
Give
hope
some
with
people
the
that need to
strength
move
of
out
what we
before
do,
that time.
Yeah.
we could actually envision someday that there's the Friends of Devon.
I like your vision.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, I didn't have anything else.
I also did want to mention, I think when we were working with SEPTA at the time. And that might be the reason why DVRPC did the study, is they were on the books for effective long range planning. It's not that long range anymore. At the time, they were supposed to have about $20+ billion to improve the Devon train station. I don't know if there's capacity, but that was supposed to be around this next year. But I think with SEPTA's, funding issues, they've definitely kicked the can.
Okay.
But there is something.
Lucky to have service.
Yeah.
Candace will be
But SEPTA does have something on their radar long range of
Okay.
doing something at the station.
Maybe you can buy a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
No, you have to come to Berwyn for that. You can't have nice things.
Yeah.
No coffee in that.
Next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Next item on the agenda is the old Lancaster / North Lakeside intersection study. Bowman.
So this is Chris Williams from Bowman is online. He'll be able to answer technical questions that you may have, but I'll just give you a quick overview. Again, in the end of 2025, this project was discussed and listed on the 2026 Planning Commission initiative to really take a look at this intersection. Since I've started in Easttown, which was in August of 2022, I have received countless concerns about this area, about speeding, about the going under the tunnel and, et cetera, and how we can improve this area. I asked Bowman to provide a PSA and provide us a study to give us an overview and suggestions and associated cost as close as he could to give recommendations on improvements that we would have and we could move forward if the township would like. The price came in a little higher, that's why it's in front of you tonight. So if you're in agreement with this PSA, I recommend making a motion because it's gonna go in front of the Board of Supervisors. If you say, no, you know what, we don't wanna do it, then obviously it's dead in the water. But if you wanna move forward with it, we would need a motion tonight for it to go on to the Board of Supervisors agenda in April.
And how much did we budget for it? And it's 35 now.
Yeah, so we anticipated somewhere around like $15,000 to $20,000. It came in a little higher. Like reading the PSA, it's the tasks that are listed, I think are important to really get an understanding of what is happening at that intersection. Not that I want to sway anybody, right? But this is just my unsolicited opinion. I think the tasks are important and it's information that is needed to have a full understanding of what is going on and how to truly improve that intersection and going under there and what can be done. With that said, Chris, I did a lot of talking, so you can take over, huh?
Yeah, I can give a very brief overview. So we did put together a very comprehensive scope in terms of our approach to this project. Certainly if the Planning Commission prefers, we could certainly reduce the scope in some fashion if that's would allow the project to be more in line with your budget expectations. But let me explain how we approached it. So, it is certainly about that intersection at Old Lancaster, Lakeside, and the railroad overpass, but it's more than that, right? So anything that we do, not only at that intersection, but if we are looking at options to change Lakeside Avenue and Old Lancaster Road, you're really looking at that whole area, right? So anything we do to change the flow of traffic in that area, it's going to have a ripple effect to the other intersections. So you really need to look at that as a system. So you're looking at Old Lancaster and Route 30. We're looking at Lakeside and Route 30. And then we're looking at both intersections on either side of the railroad overpass. And again, anything we do to change traffic flow is going to have a ripple effect to the other intersections. So we need to chase that through and understand, well, what are the ramifications of any changes that we might make, right? So we could go one way in one direction. We could go one way in another direction. We've started brainstorming some different ideas. We could look at a one-way pattern on just Old Lancaster Road, but keeping Lakeside Avenue two-way. Or we could look at the entire roadway section, Lakeside and Old Lancaster, as one way. So again, a lot of different options. Our approach also includes 3 check-in meetings with the Planning Commission, right? So those are meetings, they do take time to prepare. If we wanted to just complete the study and check in at the end, that would certainly be a way to reduce scope. But I would feel more comfortable knowing how important this project is to the Planning Commission. I'd feel more comfortable having regular check-ins with this group so that we can talk about our findings and get your feedback along the way. So our approach was to initially gather existing data, right? So we would conduct traffic counts. I realize we do have some traffic counts that we gathered as part of the complete street study. My thought was, since then Trader Joe's opened, it'd be ideal to get updated traffic counts just to see if that's changed anything right in this area. We may have more traffic flow at Old Lancaster Road and Route 30 and at Lakeside and Route 30 than maybe we didn't have as much traffic previously, because when we did the counts for the complete street study, Trader Joe's wasn't open. So, again, if the budget allows, I'd prefer to get updated traffic counts at those 2 intersections. But if not, we could use our older traffic counts. We are completing for the first time traffic counts at Francis, Warren, and Old Lancaster, and then Old Lancaster and Lakeside on either side of the railroad. Those have not been counted before, so those need to be new traffic counts. So our approach was to gather existing conditions, existing traffic counts. We would do a detailed field inventory of the study area, right? So we would pick up dimensional information about the road. We would pick up pedestrian facilities information. We would gather crash data. We would gather right-of-way information. We would pick up signage and utilities and really just do a detailed field inventory, which would allow us to establish like a baseline blueprint for what the study area looks like. And then we would analyze existing traffic conditions. And we would also brainstorm some initial ideas. We would like to come to the Planning Commission for the first meeting with not only a snapshot of, well, here's what's happening today, right? Here's the number of pedestrians we counted. Here's the volume of traffic. Here's the crash conditions. Here's how traffic is operating. But we would also brainstorm a list of ideas. And we would just kind of illustrate them in a very schematic, almost cartoon sense, where we put lines and dashed lines and arrows on a paper. But, I think we could be looking at a variety of ideas through this project. One would be to keep it the way it is today, which is I don't think what anybody wants, but we do need to compare it to the existing condition. But then other ideas that we would be looking at is potentially converting Old Lancaster Road to one-way just between the railroad and Route 30. The other is converting Old Lancaster Road and Lakeside to one-way, so the entire section of road. We also had a crazy idea. What if we closed Old Lancaster Road from the railroad overpass down to Route 30, but we left it open only for local traffic, right? So that the only traffic that would be using Old Lancaster Road would really just be for the businesses right in that area, and anybody that's just passing through, they would be directed to Lakeside Avenue and out to Route 30 that way. Again, crazy idea, but just trying to throw ideas against the wall and see what sticks. We also had an idea, what if long-term planning, maybe, and I'll pick on the Verizon store for lack of any other business, but what if in the future the Verizon store redevelops and it's no longer the Verizon store? Maybe there's an opportunity for almost like an alley connection between Lakeside and Route 30 in that area. And then any redevelopment in that area could kind of be focused in on this new alley, but that alley would provide a relief route between Lakeside and Route 30 and maybe take pressure off of the existing sections of Lakeside and Old Lancaster. And then, of course, one of the alternatives that we would look at is designating, taking a look at the section of Old Lancaster under the railroad, possibly going to a one-lane condition so that we could also look at pedestrian accommodations. And then we'd have to look at traffic control measures in order to make that work. So, once we establish existing conditions, we would come to this group, we would present these ideas. We will not have studied them, but we would just come and we'll maybe come up with other ideas, but we'd like to have a conversation with the Planning Commission and say, okay, well, here's a bunch of ideas that we've come up with. Now, which of these ideas would you like us to consider further? So then, that would be the first Planning Commission. Then we would go into our future conditions evaluation. So now we would look at traffic conditions in the future, but we would actually test the alternatives that you would like us to test further. So for our budgeting purposes, we're assuming we're testing 4 alternatives going forward. So one is a no-build alternative, but then we could be looking at really anywhere from 2 to 3 other alternatives. That could be any one of those ideas or maybe other ideas that I had brainstormed. We would evaluate traffic flow under those alternatives. We would look at sort of design requirements because depending on which alternative we're looking at, it's going to create opportunities. We're going to have to establish minimum lane width requirements. That would then open up opportunities maybe for sidewalks and pedestrian accommodations. It would provide opportunities for on-street parking to be thought of in a different manner, but we would have to establish, well, what are the minimum design requirements for those ideas. As we've evaluated those alternatives, we would evaluate them. We would develop sort of a scorecard criteria that we would use to evaluate the alternatives. We would score each of the alternatives. Then we would come back for a second Planning Commission meeting. We would share the results of that alternatives analysis with you, collect your feedback. I'm expecting that in this second meeting, you're likely going to have some input. So we would leave that second Planning Commission meeting and we would undergo what we're calling an alternatives refinement, right? So you're going to have some feedback. You're going to ask us to kind of hone in and kind of dial in maybe the alternatives a little bit. But at that point, I think we'll be much closer to developing preferred solution or solutions. When we get to the preferred solutions, we would like to maybe develop a little bit more of a detailed schematic graphic, kind of showing what the alternatives would look like. Develop maybe a typical section showing what the new roadway cross section would look like and how it could be used. And then we would develop an implementation plan for the preferred solution or solutions that would organize the various ideas into short-term, mid-term, and long-term improvements. Also develop ballpark cost estimates, identify challenges, constraints, and a potential schedule for implementation. Then we'd come back to the Planning Commission for a third meeting, review the alternatives refinement with you. And then at that point, we've gotten all of the feedback and guidance that we would need from you, and we would develop a final report. So we've definitely taken a comprehensive approach. Maybe we've taken a little bit more, we're too detailed in the approach, but we know Berwyn is important. There's a lot of people that use this area, both people that shop and patronize the businesses here, but also people that just travel through. So it's sort of a critical road section. It affects a lot of people. This is a great project and an opportunity to not only maintain traffic flow to some degree, but also open up opportunities for pedestrian mobility. And so we think it requires more of an alternatives approach where we're looking at different ideas. And then hopefully that allows us to really hone in on what would be the preferred solution with your guidance, of course, as we collect your feedback through the process.
Chris, are you going to present this? Or let me rephrase that. When will this be presented to the supervisors? At the end?
So yeah, we don't have that in here, but if I can offer that if the Planning Commission is comfortable really being the steering committee through this entire project process, and if we think we're comfortable waiting to the end to share the results with the Board of Supervisors, we'd be happy to attend a Board of Supervisors meeting at the end. Would love to have some support from the Planning Commission at that board meeting, but we would offer to attend a Board of Supervisors meeting to present the final results. and without changing the cost on the project.
Chris, a question for you. The way that, well, the way you've spoken and the way your proposal's worded, it's sort of a separate suite of services from the complete street study, but can you just speak to how they would, obviously they're pretty closely related and the solutions are going to be pretty closely related. So can you just speak to how those, how those sort of results would work together?
So the only area where they're really related is at the intersections with Old Lancaster Road and Route 30 in Midland. That's a common intersection. And then Lakeside and Route 30, that is a common intersection. So what we would do is, as we are looking at any changes more in the interior of this study area, right? So if we're looking at changes to Old Lancaster Road or Lakeside Avenue, and if we're looking to change traffic flow, we will have to follow that through and really understand, well, what are the impacts of those changes to the intersection of Lakeside and Route 30 and Old Lancaster, Midland and Route 30. So in part of that, we've already begun to develop ideas for solutions at those Route 30 intersections. So we would continue to test those improvement ideas as part of this project to make sure whatever we're doing here doesn't somehow change what's already been identified through that project.
But as far as the services themselves, are they radically different for what you're looking at here versus what you did for what you presented for the Route 30 study? I mean, should we think of them as similar kind of, similar services we're getting from you?
They're very complementary. They're different in the sense that it's a very different study area, right? The Old Lancaster Road, Lakeside Avenue wasn't a part of that, but it's complementary. It's an ideal time to be doing this because while we're now looking at Old Lancaster and Lakeside, we can do it with to ensure that we have some level of consistency and conformity with whatever's being discussed as part of the Complete Streets project. One area where I think they are common, as part of the Complete Streets project, we projected traffic volumes 20 years into the future as part of the traffic analysis for future conditions. We would look to maintain that same time frame so that we're largely dealing with I think it would get confusing for folks if we're dealing with two different timelines. So we'll look to marry up those timelines so we're looking at the same future year. So yes, I think that allows the two studies to be very complementary with one another.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
I guess, Chris, to piggyback on Bill's question is, will the Complete Street study for Route 30 govern what your recommendations will be for these two intersections, or vice versa?
I don't think the Route 30 study would govern. I think what would happen is, depending on which alternatives we're evaluating for this study, for Old Lancaster and Lakeside, right? So if the Planning Commission says, hey, we want to look at one-way traffic flow, which I suspect you will, because it was mentioned in your kind of year-end 2025 report. If we're looking at one-way traffic flow, whether that's on Lakeside and Old Lancaster or just on Old Lancaster, again, that's going to change the volume of traffic and where it's directed to Route 30. So we would look to really validate and ensure that the improvements that are being identified as part of the Complete Street project still hold up. I suspect they would. If this study shows that they don't, then we then have to make a decision, right? So at that point, we can decide whether the Complete Street study is the driving force, and we will conform our improvements to make sure that it works with the Complete Street study. But I almost would hope that that's not the case. I'm thinking if we can approve this, if the township wants to advance this project soon, we're envisioning about a 4-month time frame to be putting all of this together. There might still be time if we're coming up with new ideas that somehow enhance or tweak the improvements in the Complete Street study. It'd be ideal if we could get that incorporated into the Complete Street study so that it's all one project, essentially.
I think that's important because we're looking at it as part of that, the same problem, I think, or the same project. Or at least I am.
Yeah, and I think if time's of the essence, if we get authorization soon, I think there is time to match those up schedule wise.
The only other thing I would say is I feel like the afternoon hours, should it be extended or changed from, it should extend to at least 7 p.m. And I only say that because School of Rock, Betsy Daly has classes at night and they're only getting really started after 5. And you only have an hour that you're talking about it, whereas I think going to about 7 is probably going to be more reflective of heavier traffic or potentially heavier traffic for those activities and also for like Casey's and things like that.
No, that's a great idea. And as a parent that has spent a lot of time sitting in that parking lot waiting for my son for his drum lessons at School of Rock, I sat there and saw the traffic build at Casey's, right? So I understand what you're talking about. We can certainly increase that to 7 o'clock. If there is authorization to move forward, ideally we would want to do the traffic counts. I'd like to do them in the month of April or certainly no later than early May. We want to get those done before the summertime while school's still in session. So we're really right in the sort of the most opportune time to be doing those counts. So again, I think timing works well. And yeah, we can absolutely expand those counts to 7 p.m.
I don't think the weekend's gonna be as bad. I think like Sunday farmers market, it's not as heavy. Saturday's probably gonna be very reflective of Thursday property times.
Chris, I have some comments, maybe suggestions. Looking at your document, I guess the first paragraph, is kind of the theme of the study, and I know it's stated here that the purpose is to create a better opportunity for pedestrian connectivity and parking. I think it'll not just better, but safer for pedestrians and also intersection operations, which I think you are doing that. You didn't really quite talk about parking, like I missed what kind of things you're gonna be looking at parking, it's like angled parking or utilizing parking spaces more efficiently.
And that is what we will be looking at as part of the alternatives, right? So as we kind of establishing the minimum design requirements for lanes, sidewalk, parking, and then as we're looking at alternatives and knowing what our minimum design requirements are, we can then, we're limited. We're not going to widen these roads, right? They're really established as their width. And so if we establish minimum standards for how those roads can be used, then we can look at what sort of what's available within that canvas, kind of edge of road. So to me, it's moving traffic, it's parking cars, and it's moving pedestrians. And so how can we best use that total width to do all three of those things?
Okay. Then in your section 1 of existing traffic conditions, you may know this already, but I think when it was McMahon, I think you guys counted Francis and Cromer intersection. So I know it's just a little bit of a way, but there is some volume there that can help you with your traffic.
Yeah, so I don't think we did. That was done as part of a traffic study, I think, for a land development. I mean, unless I'm remembering incorrectly, Nick, but even if it was,
this was done at the intersection of Cromer and Francis and Warren, that intersection, because there was a lot of crashes happening.
Oh, yeah. It's probably a few years old now.
Okay. Right.
I'd be hesitant at this point.
Okay, no, that's fine. And then in your data collection effort, I know you're probably aware of the near miss analysis a lot of comp vendors are offering. I don't know if you've ever seen that near miss.
Oh, near miss.
Yeah, because I'm assuming you're using video technology for counting, right?
We are.
Yeah, so I don't know, just looking at seeing that, because I feel like it's some valuable information that may be able to be captured at the tunnel entrances. It's basically using the video technology to it identifies any close,
Yeah,
Close.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
you know, I
Yeah.
know there's costs associated, but sometimes they kind of throw that in, you know, but
So-
maybe that location might be important.
Yeah, to my knowledge, Nick, there's one vendor that does that near miss technology. You've probably seen this, have seen the same
Yeah.
marketing presentations that I've seen. We have not used them. If we can get the counts through that vendor and it doesn't throw off the budget, I'm happy to do so. But we didn't plan on that in terms of this budgeting. But we can, I won't commit to it, but I'll commit to looking into it. And if it looks like we could do that as part of this, I'd be glad to do so.
Okay, looking at that, mention my name, they may throw you a bone, maybe.
All right.
I agree that even if it was just that tunnel, that is where people would get the
Yeah.
most feedback about.
Because even you may not pick up a lot on the crash data information, but seeing that near miss could kind of give us all valuable information. And then on section 5 regarding field inventory, I don't know how important that is, but it'd be good to know if there's any like, activity information that can be captured, you know?
Well, Nick, what was that? I'm sorry for number 5. Which one?
Bike activity.
Oh, well, that isn't. So this is more field inventory of features, right? So we're picking up existing physical features, but we will be counting bikes as well.
Okay. And then I know I've had the owners say, or Casey's that is kind of a cut through for folks that are kind of familiar with that area and they're using that Casey driveway parking lot to cut through to Old Lancaster. So I don't know if there's any sort of recommended traffic calming or something that you can, recommend. I don't know if there is anything,
That would have to be within the Casey's parking lot.
Yeah, people are going from 30 going to Old Lancaster or vice versa. It's not, I'm sure we've all done it once. Yes.
No.
Yeah. I've certainly have seen people do that.
Yeah.
Any traffic
It's been brought
calming.
up.
Yeah, I think it's good to be aware of it. I think any traffic calming we would do would have to be within their parking lot. That's really going to be their call.
Yeah. Or if they're signing on either of those roads that could maybe help some people, you shouldn't be doing this, and then all right, no, that's it. That's all I had there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think this is important. The scope sounds comprehensive. It may be that we're counting more intersections than necessary, or it may be shortcuts. I don't think it's our place to say that we should recommend reduced scope. I think I would recommend it as is with Nick's feedback and any other feedback.
I totally agree with that. I think when we were talking about complete streets, there were lots of questions about this area.
Yeah.
And we're like, yep, that's not in the scope. So now it is.
I think it has to be, yeah.
I think this is my 3rd year on the planning commission, and I don't think any other singular issue has
Come on as much.
There's much people out here to ask about doing something to fix it than this, so. That being said, I will make a motion to recommend the board of supervisors approve the Belleville PSA.
Second.
Anybody public comment on this, or?
There is no public comment online.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Okay, approved by nothing.
Thank you for the feedback, and if it gets approved by the board, look forward to working with you on it. And we did kind of outline a pretty tight schedule of about 4.5 months to try and knock this thing, kind of move quickly so that we can get it caught up with the Complete Streets project. So we'll be working closely with you and look forward to it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, next item on the agenda is just any other public comment about anything that hasn't been discussed tonight.
No public comment.
Okay, our next meeting is Tuesday, May 5th, 2026.
Cinco de Mayo.
Right. Margarita.